On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very special treat. He's a mindfulness and meditation sage, music producer, musician, author, and podcast host. No big deal. On his podcast, he discusses how to live better through teachings on mindfulness, mental clarity, and personal growth. And his show has been mentioned in the New York Times. Big facts. He's a coach and he loves music and has mastered hundreds of records for other artists, just to name a few. His ability to make meditation easily digestible and change your perspective is second to none, and is here to teach you that the more we understand ourselves, the less we suffer, and his content will penetrate your soul. He's just a juggernaut in all facets of life and a terrific human being. Please welcome the wise, stoic, and enlightened, the handsome and soulful Cory Allen. How you doing, Cory?
I'm good, man. Thank you. That felt like being at my own funeral. It's like, yeah. It's also it's funny that you use the word stoic in the intro because there's been some debate on that. So, I was talking to a couple of my friends recently, and they mentioned that they thought I was very stoic, and I was like, "Really? You think so?" No, dude, you're like carved out of marble. Like you're one of the most stoic people I know. But then a few days ago, I was talking to someone I met for the first time, and they were like, "You're incredibly expressive." And I was like, "Well, what am I then? Am I stoic or incredible? Am I an expressive stoic? What's happening there?"
So what's the answer? Are you
Good
like
question.
me?
Maybe we'll find out during the podcast. You'll let
I
me know afterwards.
I think it's somewhere as a hybrid, and that's the utmost compliment. Like you're very cool, calm, and collective, and stoic in that sense. But when you articulate something, it just comes across as very powerful. So I think maybe somewhere in between.
I think that's it. Yeah, I'll be an active stoic. How about that?
I love it. We probably could have chatted for a while before we record. We're like, we should probably save some of this juicy stuff for the show. For our listeners who might not be familiar, my best suggestion is do a deep dive, play catch up, check out all the unbelievable content and all the other stuff Cory has going on, his book, everything. Play catch up. What I think's most valuable today is we just have an unbelievable conversation. Before we dive in, we're going to get a little weird. You ready for me?
Oh yeah, love weird.
Same. When you wake up every day, brother, for you personally, what are some non-negotiables for you?
Yeah, so I refuse to get dressed all day long. That's what first non-negotiable. Just joking. You said you want to get weird, so I was trying to get weird.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
That's great.
this shirt I've got on is actually CGI, so I just refuse that. I just CGI and everything.
It's AI.
Yeah, it's AI. No, I mean, so my morning routine that I'm very stuck to is, of course, I got a golden retriever, so he commands and demands a lot of attention. Take care of the golden
Who is that?
retriever. My golden retriever.
You dog lover. Ready, love you.
Yeah, yeah. He refuses to be ignored in the mornings, so I'll take
What's
care
his
of
name?
him. Bowie, like David Bowie.
Love it.
Yeah, he's the dog that fell to earth. He's a wild man. So anyway, yeah, definitely take care of him. But then I drink coffee, I exercise, and then I meditate and take the dog on a walk. That's the routine. And of course, I have my dietary routine as well, which I don't know if we want to get into that, but it's simple. Just basically, supplements and powders and things like that, just to get the system going. That whole routine of exercise, of taking the dog on a walk to get sunlight, of meditation, all those things are in service of just trying to tune my mind up to its optimal state. I want to put myself in a position where after the morning's over and that kind of 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock stretch of time starts happening, that my body and mind are in the best shape they can be so I can be the most effective that I can during the afternoon when I'm working.
This is going to be so much fun. I can already tell. I'm just curious because you start your morning off with coffee and then meditate. Is it a little bit harder to focus because maybe you're going all over the place? I guess not, because that's probably why you do it.
Yeah, no, it's not for me. And that's something that people have asked me over the years of like, is it okay to meditate after drinking coffee? And I always refer them to this classic story of a Zen teacher who one time had his students and he was showing them how it's actually a bit of folklore, showing them how to meditate, and they all were falling asleep. All the monks were falling asleep. So he rips his eyelashes or his eyelids off and throws them on the ground, and it mystically springs up a bunch of green tea leaves, and then he brews green tea for all of the monks, and they drink that so they can stay awake while they're meditating.
That's awesome. Rips his eyelids off.
Yeah, yeah. Just a bit of Zen Buddhist folklore, but so it's in the tradition to meditate caffeinated, is what I'm
Oh,
saying.
so I get it. Totally understood. Interesting. I actually do the same, if I'm being honest. Actually, I'm not, I don't know if I necessarily meditate. I realized specifically when I was telling you before we recorded a little bit about my background, when I really started to understand the power of getting quiet and blocking out the noise, it's like a portal to expansion. But I don't necessarily sit there and meditate, but I do pray every morning. And for me, when I'm running, that's when I do my best connecting. And I feel like for me, that's my moving meditation.
Hmm. Yeah, beautiful. I mean, I love running. I was a runner 5 times a week for like a decade
Really?
plus. Yeah, yeah. And then I stopped about 2 years ago because this is this is just sort of weird, but I was running, like I said, 5 times a week. And at the time I was meditating for about 2 hours a day. And I eat well and whatnot. And I actually had this issue where I started having like too low of a heart rate, and I actually like lost consciousness randomly a few times because my heartbeat was so slow. And after going to a cardiologist and whatnot, they were like, you're fine, but your resting heart, actually wore a heart monitor for like a week just to check it out. And they're like, your resting heart rate is like in the 40s. So like everything looks great, but it's really low. And so I was like, shit, I got to get healthy. I got to stop running, start eating some fried foods, and get that heart rate up again. So I actually transitioned out of running because of that. Because I guess, it was just sort of my cardio plus the meditation plus the diet and genetics just had my pulse so low that I actually switched over to weight training instead of that.
But why, how come running would even lower it more?
My understanding from what I was told was that basically, just improving the cardio so much that this resting heart rate gets lower, and so it's like, yeah, that's what I was told, and I was like, all right, that's cool. And then I got really obsessed with weight training, so I haven't looked back.
That's your thing now.
Yeah, love it,
When-
love it.
I love it. And I can understand that, especially if a professional says that. When you were in your running prime, did you ever run a marathon?
No, I'm sort of just by nature, my personality is kind of like a lone wolf, like anti structures, anti systems. Like, so I'm not one to go kind of be a part of something like that. Nothing against it at all, but it just doesn't. Mine is like I would go run alone, like to a mountaintop or something. That would be my type of preferred mindset and space. But I haven't done a marathon. No.
Understood. Okay. I love it. Your book that came out, when did that drop?
The first one was 2019.
There's another one right now?
It comes out in the future. It comes out in the 2024. So
I
yeah,
was gonna
next
say, I
summer.
thought I would have known about that. Can you tell us any more
Yeah.
about it?
But the new one or the first one?
The new one. Or is
Yeah,
that
sure. I
one
mean,
perhaps?
the new one is about it's essentially about how to undo your negative thought patterns, to recognize and become more self-aware of your internal dialogue, and to see how you're limiting yourself through your thought patterns, thought systems, and so forth, and change that so that you can then take charge, take ownership of your life, live intentionally, and really break through and get to those places that you want to go. I mean, one of the things that has really become apparent to me just through Instagram, because I get a lot of messages and feedback and stuff every day from people that like my writing, is
Awesome.
that people, thank you, people feel stuck where they're at in their lives. And that's one of the most universal things that I notice from people. And the conflict in my eyes is that because a person has lived, the narrative of their life, of their experience, they think that what they have happened to experience is all that's possible simply because it's what they're familiar with, right? So they don't question the fact that, like, oh, it's been normalized, right? Their experience isn't normal, it's just what they happen to have experienced up until that point. And so it makes them believe that, like, no, this is my life. So it's like thinking like that makes it to where life is happening to them, as opposed to them choosing and really trying to break through and penetrate and intentionally move their life in the direction that they want. So they feel like they don't have the power or the ability to go further, to level things up, and they need that mindset shift to be able to see that what's outside of what you think is possible is really available to you.
I mean, I don't know if I could agree anymore. I love this, brother. There's so much alignment here, and I knew this was going to be fun, but this is on a whole other level. And I know this for certain because that was me that you just described for so long, 35 years to be exact, but more specifically, the last 13. And then when I got really quiet in the lockdown, it occurred to me that I have a choice. We all have a choice. And I was so invested in this story, this movie, if you will, that this was it for me. I'm going to be reactive. I'll always be stressed out. I'll make a certain amount of money. I'll never really fall in love. When I got quiet, it occurred that I could choose a different story, a different movie, if you will. I finally became aware that I can transform from reactive to proactive and, like you said, kind of penetrate life and live intentionally and remove limiting beliefs. And one of the things that I love talking about now, and I've been talking about a lot in the book that just dropped, is the belief systems. We weren't born with any of these beliefs, but we give them so much life and energy over time, wherever they came from. But once we understand, once we become aware, like you just attested to, we can start giving life and energy to new beliefs, and we can replace those, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like we have what I like to call an inherited belief system. So basically it's the circumstances of where we were born, what time, like not what time of day, but what era were we born in? Were you born in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s? The location, your family, your parents, everything that they've absorbed, all of their baggage, and all of that stuff gets, you know, pushed into you. It all shapes what you believe reality is. And then you go out into the world and have your experience really based off random chance. You have all these random events and experiences that you have with other people and with life and in the world. And it all creates this subjective view of what the world is like. And until you do exercises or various practices to begin to challenge that, you think that what you perceive and what you experience is what is.
I love this, brother. And one of the things that you often like to talk about, and I think it's so valuable for the audience today, is the power of perspective.
Hmm.
And it reminds me of like two people can go through a very similar, if not identical experience, but yet have a totally different response or a totally different perspective based upon that. And that's all in regards to their perspective, right?
Yeah, I mean that's really everything. This is something I've been talking about for like 10 years nonstop because it's so important and it's kind of an odd thing I think for people to understand, but it's the most important insight I think I could ever share. And basically that is, just to kind of repeat what you just said, it is recognizing that your perception is subjective. It's like the way that we're looking at the world, we are getting an impression of what's out there, an impression of, what people are feeling, what people's motivations are. We get an impression of kind of what even the logistical side of the world is like, of what, means different things. It's like we all have this unique perception of like what's out there, and everyone's minds are basically like these cameras, these instruments in a lab taking readings from the world. And since we're all different people, we're getting different readings, right? So we're getting different information, different perspectives of the true nature of reality. And the I guess the challenging thing is that you can't undo the way that you see the world, in terms of like you'll always be observing objective reality through the filter of your own mind and all of your past experiences and everything. However, the liberating thing comes from, if you understand that, you then recognize that what you perceive and what you experience in life is simply just, really a translation of what's going on out there. And it doesn't mean that you're always right. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It's just information that is open to interpretation, open to debate. So that means that if you were to get in, arguments, those things go away, because you're like, what we're basically litigating on both of our versions of reality. And it's like there's a different way to approach life whenever you understand that, with a lot more openness, a lot more compassion, and a lot more self-awareness.
This is so good. And when I hear you speak, it reminds me of the Matrix, and
Hmm.
like being unplugged and then understanding how it works and then plugging back in intentionally. And I feel as though the people that put a dent in the universe that really changed the world, trailblazers, it's not because their IQ is necessarily so much higher than other people's. It's just because their frame or their lens of the world is a little bit more enriched. And whereas they see possibilities and opportunities, someone else might have a dimmed perspective and they see limitations. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that feeds into another really important thing, which is the mindset of approaching life with curiosity. A lot of people just take what's there as like, okay, this is final. Or as you said, kind of a dim and almost self-defeatist view on like, what you can kind of get away with in life in terms of like, it's wild what you can accomplish and where you can go if you just look at those situations that you come up to, even like a fork in the road or even an opportunity with a person of like, okay, like what can we do here? Like what dream as big as you can and like imagine the best case scenario and then aim for that. And even if you don't hit that, you still are landing somewhere much higher than just accepting whatever the situation is at face value.
Yeah, this is so much fun to me. Like, this doesn't feel like work. And it's funny because I didn't even have an agenda for today's conversation. I just wanted to support you and promote you to all of our listeners because I think that you would just add a ton of value. There's so many different places we could take this conversation. One of the really, really cool things that you talk about, which I think is really interesting, I'd love to hear more about, is owning your struggles. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people kind of maybe try to get away from them and hide from them, but you say actually own them, stand on top of your story, not in it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the only way that you can grow really is by owning your struggles because at the end of the day, that's really taking responsibility, right? So you got to look at what are the elements of yourself that are holding you back? What are the things that are kind of that you've done that are preventing you from growing? What are the things that you won't allow yourself to confront that you know about yourself to be true, but you're ignoring because it's either too painful or it's too threatening to your ego or something like that, and really looking at those things dead in the eye and deciding to take action is crucial. And then along the way, and a different perspective on owning your struggles, like along the way in your life, whenever you inevitably do mess up and you do things wrong, you're accidentally shitty to people, you fuck up, whatever it is, it's all good as long as you just take responsibility for that stuff and then communicate well and keep moving forward. That and all that stuff, not only does it just make it to where you keep growing because you're overcoming, but it also builds the character, and it's how you understand like what integrity actually is. I think integrity is one of the most crucial elements that a person can cultivate, but it has to be cultivated because you have to experience what it means to hold integrity in spaces, not only with other people, but with yourself.
That's it, brother. I love this. Such a beautiful soul. And I couldn't agree more, especially with integrity, um, with yourself, right? Honoring yourself, um, and just being true to yourself and being in congruency with what you think or what you say and what you actually do in your actions as well. See so many people, they say one thing and they do another.
Yeah. No, no doubt, no doubt. And is the reality is that even if people in life don't notice the exact things those people are not kind of in alignment with, there's a feeling, there's like a kind of a vibe that comes from someone who doesn't live a life of integrity. And that's one of those kind of frequencies that people can pick up. It's like your animal senses in a way where you can, you meet someone and someone can just feel a little squirrely. They just have energy. It's like, that is not a deep, rich, present, warm, solid person. That is someone that feels a little off. And so living like that, it kind of follows you around like this, like there's this haze, there's kind of a scent that you have. And it's yeah, so you're not getting away with it, is what I'm trying to say. Is that people that live like that, it's like others can tell, even if they don't have the language to put to it. So you're actually not getting ahead. You're really doing yourself a disservice because you're creating space and distance between yourself and others, and you're not going to be able to have real connections in life. And at the end of the day, that's really where most of your happiness is going to come from.
I think this is so important because when I finally had the courage to make some tough choices and read about myself, one of the first things I did is that I decided to forgive myself for not being where I hoped I'd been, 35 years young, and all the maybe the shitty stuff that I did in the past that I wasn't necessarily proud of. And I think this is really powerful for everybody listening today. And just to be clear, you don't have to approve of everything that you've done, but you do have to accept it. And that's liberating. And once you do that, now you could take your energy and focus and worry about one thing. What's the next move? How do we
Right.
how do we expand? How do we step into the future? but you have to forgive yourself all the struggles, the pain, and the setbacks, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's like we're all fallible. Like no one can get it right. We're always going to mess up, but that's just how we learn, man. We'll do bad things. We'll be bad to people on accident or on purpose whenever we're, younger probably. And that's just all part of the game, and it's just recognizing it. And like you said, being able to, take ownership of those things. And every time, like the way I looked at it is like every time I have done something in life that is wrong or ended up, being hurtful, I'm like, okay, now I know what not to do. Like, like I got it. Okay. And so like you said, allowing yourself to be human, forgiving yourself for doing those things, and then just learning how to live in a better way moving forward. That's really where it's at.
That's it. And then you can never really be crippled or discouraged, right? Because it's just data or it's feedback. It's all right, that didn't work so well. How can I learn from that and then reapply it to future endeavor and be better from it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, this is so good. One thing that I've really tripled down on over the last couple of years, and it's been huge for me, is being super present. And one thing I like to say is like stacking magical moments. And what I mean by that is I'm not worried about anything else in the world right now, like my meeting in 40 minutes or what happened an hour ago. It's just me and you right now. And I just want to develop rapport and have the best conversation possible so that we can deliver the most value to the audience. And what I noticed is when you're super present in each interaction, it's like a portal to expansion. And if you and a lot of people, like, it's become trendy to say like win the day, but what if you just win the next moment, right, or the next
Hmm.
activity, and you begin to stack those? And for me, whereas when I used to get in a rut, sadly, if I'm being honest, sometimes it would last a month, maybe a week, whatever the case may be. But now, because I'm human and we all have them, once I catch myself and realize like I'm not in a good frequency right now, I just get to center and say, how can I forget about everything else that's in my head? How can I just be super present and make the next activity the best it possibly can be? And then I'm able to kind of create some magic and get out of that rut. And you often also talk about touching the present moment. And I'm just curious, when you say that, is that the same, or what exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, no, that's the same. It's really getting all of the thought fragments, all of the perspective, the weight of the momentum of the experience you've been having up until that moment, being able to step out of that and really let it go and embrace just the richness of being alive in a human body in this moment in time and feeling what that's like. Because whenever you can clear your mind, and of course meditation is incredibly valuable for learning this, but like getting, dropping deep into the present moment, you described it well, like not thinking about the future, not worrying about the past, just being in your body, being aware right now. The abundance that's available there is wild, but we normally miss it because we're distracted. As you said, we're thinking about other things. But if you just tune in, even on a sensory level, to the present, it's really, really beautiful, and it's very grounding, and it's really inspiring. It's like if you're sitting in a desk, you're like, oh, this sucks. At work in an office or something. But if you stop and like, okay, that's a story, right? That's just some weird narrative in your mind that you're attached to as what's happening. But that's not really what's happening. What's happening is that you're like an animal that's floating on a rock in the middle of infinity, you know? And it's like, okay, well, let's think about this. What am I feeling right now? Let me relax. It's like, oh, I feel like cool air moving across my skin. I feel the weight of my body like pushing into the chair. I feel my lungs expanding whenever I breathe in and exhale. I feel my muscles releasing every time that I exhale. I can see like shadows and like light glistening off of surfaces. You can smell like crispness. You can hear like it's raining outside my office right now. It's like you can hear the texture of rain. It's like just being present with everything in your senses makes you go like, wow, this is insane. Like this is the wildest vacation I've ever been on, is just this moment. And I think that tuning back into that brings you back into yourself and draws you closer into, you know, what's really important. And it clarifies your perspective because it releases that story of kind of conflict and tension that we get wrapped up into a lot of times.
Especially here in Big Apple, Manhattan, it's like go, go, go. I was just in Beverly Hills in LA this weekend for our book launch party and a book signing at the Grove, and just getting away from the city a little bit, I'm able to really like heighten my presence and just be so much more mindful. And just to be clear for everyone listening, like this is just like a muscle, right? You have to develop this. You have to work at this to be able to get much more present in each interaction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like it, you can do it having never done it before. But like anything, the more that you do it and the more consistently you do it, the deeper and the easier it's going to become for you. You know, it's like you like running, it's like the first time you tried to run, you probably could run for 3 or 4 minutes and then you get tired and you have to walk for a few minutes and run for 3 or 4 minutes. And thinking about form, researching the shoes, how am I landing? Am I heel, foot, toe? What am I doing? But then fast forward 6 months later, you're out there, you can run 5 miles, you're not thinking about it, you're just in the zone, you just drop right into it. It becomes natural, You're returning and tuning into the present works just the same way.
So fun, brother. So much alignment here. I love your work. This is so exciting for the audience and so forth. One thing that I'm really big on is it's weird because I'm kind of like speaking out loud to you, but I know a lot of people don't get started with something that they want to do or they want to change their life, whatever the case may be, is because they don't have clarity. And as a result, they're waiting for that perfect time or that perfect moment. And I always encourage people to let that go. Get in the damn arena and try new things. And if it's not the thing, it'll probably be the thing that leads to the thing. Clarity follows action. However, obviously, if you're able to gain clarity and you have a way to do that, you talk about feeling a little bit more alive. And the truth is if you do have a little bit of clarity, it's much more likely that you'll take inspired action. So it's like it's a little bit of give and take for me in regards to clarity. But you talk about this a lot and you're awesome at it. What's a tangible tool that someone listening today can maybe extract from this conversation and they can try to put themselves in a position to start to gain a little bit more clarity?
Yeah, I mean, even just kind of the practice I just described is really valuable in terms of clarity of consciousness, tuning into what your experience is and what can happen in those states, if you get closer, that can get kind of closer to a meditation state, is that then the different arising thoughts that were troubling you can return and arise in your mind again. But having that spaciousness, the mental spaciousness through practicing presence will give you a kind of a bit of a gap between that story that's arising in your mind and your awareness. And it's really clarifying because then you become conscious of what it is that was going on in your mental narrative that was causing you tension. So, for example, like we talked about a minute ago, if you're in an office or something and you're feeling frustrated and bored or whatever, or burned out, you aren't really actively thinking, I'm frustrated, I'm bored, I'm burned out. That you're just feeling the weight of those emotions and you're kind of trudging through whatever the work it is that you have to do. But if you were to practice stillness or being present for a moment or some meditation, you can then recognize, like, oh yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm feeling this way. You start labeling your pains and kind of the things that you're frustrated with, and that brings clarity because it turns abstract feelings into actual defined things. And then you can learn, like, oh well, these things are causing me suffering maybe on a daily basis. And now you have clarity on, like, now I need to work to change these things. Maybe I need to do something different to my job. Maybe I need to look for another job. Maybe I need to mix up how I'm approaching things, so it can bring this type of different perspective on what you're experiencing and help you move forward in a fresh way.
So good. I think of like when you become available and you remove those negative beliefs and you're a lot more present, you're more available for those creative divine downloads, which supply you with clarity. I do that now during runs and so forth. But when I got really quiet in the pandemic was when I put this all together and changed my life and so forth. But you just like we've been talking about, like you have to be intentional. You have to create space to become this portal for expansion by gaining clarity. It's not just going to come to you out of nowhere, right?
Oh, definitely. And this, like, telling someone like you got to become a portal for expansion, like that sounds really intimidating, but it's super easy, right? The only difficult thing is just learning to build up a consistent habit of doing it. So that's like whenever I try and answer questions on beginning meditators. They'll be like, hey, how do you meditate? I can never meditate. It's like, well, first off, like, just lower the stakes on everything. Throw all that out the window. Forget about what you think you're supposed to experience, how you think you're supposed to do it, and all of that. And just consistently for 5 minutes every morning, stick it in between some of your daily routines already. Just stack it in there. So if you wake up like I described, you wake up, have some coffee, exercise a little bit before you walk the dog, then do your meditation there for 5 minutes. And you don't do anything. You just sit, you turn your phone off, you just take calm inhales and exhales, and that's all you do. And so your thoughts get crazy, they come up and they blow through your mind. That's fine. Just let them go crazy. Just watch them and observe them.
Observe.
You start feeling tension in your body. It's like, okay, just notice it. There it is. That I don't have anything to do with that. I'm just sitting here breathing and exhaling. That's all I have to do right now.
Yeah.
And through consistently doing that every morning, what a person will find is that, and so, how hard is this request? Sit there and breathe for 5 minutes. Well, you're going to be breathing anyway, whether you have this time set aside anyway. So really all you're doing is just sitting there for 5 minutes and being aware. But what will happen after you do that is that all of the kind of the backed up noise and stuff that's built up in your mind from a lifetime of not looking inward will slowly start to relax and release. It will begin to clear out of the way. And then every time that you sit and have that moment to where you can reflect and just breathe and just be present, that's where the openness that you were describing occurs. And then those big ideas that are really powerful, those big insights, now they have the room to enter your mind because you've cleared out all the other noise. So it's a simple process. It just takes consistency and intention.
You said it much more beautifully than I did, but I couldn't but I couldn't agree more. Yeah, those big ideas that change everything. Yeah.
That's why there's one that I thought I had recently that has made me laugh is it's like I feel like people have the approach to success twisted, like it's backwards. Like they're like, if I work really hard and I work, I don't know, 12 hours a day and I schedule every 30 or 15 minutes on my calendar to the T and I go hard every day, 7 days a week, I'm going to be really successful. And it's like, no, that's just like attrition warfare. That's just like, there's no strategy in that. You're just using energy and brute force to try and overpower your enemy, which is not succeeding. The real strategy and the winning successful approaches to success is having a lot of spaciousness, because the work, in quotes, the busy part it doesn't take much time. It takes an hour or something like that to execute an idea. The difficult part is getting to the idea. So if you create that spaciousness in your life where you can actually hear those big insights, then you have a clear, defined goal and plan that makes sense that you can then go accomplish quite easily because you actually know what you're going for. People who are busy and are just like working and like running themselves ragged every single day, the reason they're doing that is because they don't really know what they're going for. They don't have any clarity. So they're getting frustrated and just trying to blast through to something, but being able to create that space so that you can actually really think and hear yourself is incredibly valuable. And that's why the thing that was making me laugh is I was thinking that's why we have our best ideas in the shower, not do our best work in the shower.
Yeah, that's a great point. 100%. And oftentimes people will hear that great idea in the shower or when they're sleeping, and then they'll just forget about it, or they won't take a second and write it down and act on it, and then it just disappears.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you said your thoughts are going one way or the other. If you can actually sit back and be an observer, you'll see that they're going with without you. So you might as well give life to the ones that empower you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, you mentioned that sometimes those you don't write them down or you don't, remember what the ideas are. I think it's really important whenever an idea comes that feels inspirational, that gives you a little bit of that juice, a little bit extra life. Really important to write those things down and to keep track of them, it's because they won't stick around forever. I kind of feel like ideas are like they'll find their way into the world somehow. And it's like, I don't know if you had Play-Doh when you were a kid, but
Of
like,
course.
I remember it, I think of ideas. It's like a Play-Doh that's smashing its way through the universe. It's coming out in your mind and this person's mind, in the symbols in this like book that you're reading, like in some like what, the synchronicities, all these things that start happening with ideas. But it'll only hang out for a little while. It's like you got to pay attention to it. And if you don't pay attention to it, it'll kind of move on, So I think it's important to like write those things down. And then if you every time you keep revisiting it, if it keeps giving you that feeling of energy, that's kind of how that's something important that you should work on next.
Yes. And also like usually the ego, the opponent, or the negativity, that's the loud voice that we
Oh
have to
yeah.
block
Yeah.
out. But those like big ideas that change the world, that there's soul tugging at you, that's like you need 20 seconds of courage, act on it, or turn the volume up, and that's what you want to lean into and explore, because those aren't always there. They're not so loud.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I think also if you're like a solo entrepreneur as well, like tuning into that voice and not being passive with those ideas is really crucial, because that's how, like everything in my career that I've done, it's always been noticing one of those ideas and those feelings where I feel like the more I work on this, the more energy I have, the more excited I get. And I just pay attention to those ideas, those feelings, and make that the next thing. And then when that thing's done, I do the next one. And it's just being clear, paying attention, and following that path. And I honestly I never have worried about like success or the idea of people liking it or if it's going to make money. I just focus on the fact that like it feels intuitively true and like the right thing to me to do, and doing it the best that I can, and not like bullshitting myself around how well I'm doing the thing, because like quality just commands response and celebration from other people. It's like it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you do something really well, but you also do it with an internal clarity, then people will be into it.
100%. And what I learned the last few years is the money will come, and it's just a byproduct and an energetic exchange of doing really good work, and really
Yeah,
doing and really adding value.
absolutely. Yeah, it's like the wake after that follows a boat.
Good analogy. Yeah, hell yeah. We'll land the plane with this one, brother. This one is like a bit polarizing. At times people ask me this all the time. Some people call it boundaries. But what you said, I think, is super beautiful. And that's make it a point to spend time with people that make you feel alive. And I
Mm.
imagine you probably, maybe not. I mean, in addition to that, probably make it a point to spend less time with people that bleed you.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, sure. Yeah, man. Yeah, we don't have much time in this world, as far as human beings go. And it's easy, especially, we're talking kind of at the beginning of this podcast about some conditioned behaviors and thought patterns that we get from family or from society or whatever. And it teaches us to feel guilty about respecting ourselves, respecting our time, respecting like what we want to feel, who we want to be around. And it's just really important to choose wisely, to choose, you know, this is kind of one of the things I wrote on Instagram. A good litmus test for it is like the people you're hanging out with. If you look at them, you should ask yourself the question, would I be okay being more like them? And if the answer is yes, then you should continue to be around that person. And if the answer is no, then it's pretty clear that they're not a good influence in your life and they're not what you want to be aspiring to. They're what you kind of either were or what you've happened to be around. And you know, I think it's the definitely a quality over quantity thing as well, with people. But and I know that everyone also isn't as they're not fortunate enough to have people like that in their lives. But once you do, and you do find them, I think it's important to cherish and really respect those relationships. Right?
Couldn't agree more. I'm all about, for me personally, like right, this season of life, really probably forever now, spending more time with people like you that have a common future as me, not necessarily a common past. And I
Right.
just don't have, I'm not the same cat I was 3 weeks ago. Like I'm growing so rapidly right now. as a human or as a soul. And I just don't have much in common with people from before I reinvented myself. And I just want to be responsible and clear. Like, I don't think I'm better than them. I'm
Right.
I'm just going in a different direction. And as a result, intentionally by design, I have a little bit less of a circle now, but maybe more quality, I should say.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Yeah. And it's like, um, people from your past, it's funny if you meet them, like you see them again and they're like, man, you've really changed. It's like, yeah, good. Thank you. That's what I've been trying to do. I'm glad that you noticed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, beautifully said, brother. This is so much fun. I can't wait to share you with our community that might not have been familiar. Of all the things that you have going on right now, and there's a lot, what are you personally most excited about, and how can our audience and community best support you?
Yeah, I think, come check out the Instagram. I love writing stuff there and just the interactions I get with people. Also my podcast is called And Then It Hit Me. You can check that out on any platforms. And, that's really, I think for the audience, it's a good premise. My podcast has been around for almost 10 years. But it had a ridiculous name for the first 9 years. It was called the Astral Hustle. And I made it back in the day before there were a lot of podcasts around. And I intentionally made a ridiculous name because I wasn't planning on it turning into something professional. But then I just rolled with it. But I just made a fresh premise recently, and it's basically taking people who have been successful and asking them what the insight was that helped them go from living, what they thought was possible in life to where they became today. What did that look like from the inside out? And what thought process they have that helped them really break through and get to where they are? And so it's, great for people that are looking for that growth to kind of take some notes and get some perspectives on how they can do that for themselves.
And I want to personally say your show's awesome, and everyone should
Thank you.
download it, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and definitely get involved immediately following this episode. And I saw that you had a bunch of our mutual friends on, and it's just when you listen to your episodes, like you immediately have tangible stuff to elevate your life. I think that's what it's all about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Cory, hang out for 1 sec. I want to connect with you after. I want you to know you're the definition of perspective, mindfulness, and humility. I could personally guarantee your best is yet to come. Keep on spreading your wings and leaving your mark on this world. So much love and respect for you. Thank you so much for stopping by and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets today.
Thanks, man.
That was great, brother. Loved every second.
Great.
Yeah.
Beautiful.